You see Sydney Sweeney everywhere, right? She's one of the most visible actresses working today. But what if her incredible rise to fame isn't just about raw talent? Today we're going to dig into a really fascinating critique that argues her entire career is built on a very specific and very repeatable Hollywood formula.
Okay, so the whole argument we're looking at kicks off with this, wow, really sharp claim. It pretty much sets the stage for everything that follows. This idea that maybe what we're seeing is style being mistaken for actual substance.
So the big idea here is that her career isn't really about, chameleon-like acting. Instead, the argument goes, it's built on a super marketable aesthetic, a specific look and feel that Hollywood knows exactly how to sell. And it often uses one particular cinematic trick to do it.
And that trick is what's known as the male gaze. This analysis argues that so many of her roles are framed this way, where the camera's intense focus on her becomes a kind of narrative shortcut. It suggests there's this deep inner life, but the critique wonders if the performance itself is actually providing it.
This is where the critique gets super specific. It actually breaks her performances down into what it calls a performance toolkit. It says these 4 things are the core techniques we see again and again and again, no matter what role she's playing. Let's keep these in mind because they're going to come up a lot.
All right, so where did this whole formula even come from? Well, this analysis points a big flashing arrow directly at the role that made her a household name. The argument isn't just that Euphoria made her famous, it's that it created the literal blueprint for the rest of her career.
Now think about Cassie in Euphoria. On the page, this character is a total whirlwind, a mess of insecurity with this bottomless need for validation. That's a role that demands a ton from an actor to show all that chaos going on inside.
And this is the real kicker of the argument, the critique says the show's style is doing all the work. This quote gets right to the heart of it. The idea is that the dreamy lighting, the slow-mo, the iconic glittery makeup, they create the illusion of a deep performance, while the acting itself just kind of stays on the surface.
Okay, so if Euphoria was the blueprint, you gotta wonder, right? Did she just use it that one time? Well, according to this analysis, not even close. It argues that this exact same toolkit is just recycled across totally different projects and genres.
Just look at this comparison. It's fascinating. On one hand, you've got a prestige drama like Sharp Objects. The critique suggests that next to a powerhouse actress, she was basically just carried along by the show's heavy, moody vibe. Then on the other, you have a thriller like The Voyeurs, where the argument is the whole point of the film is to watch her, which makes her actual performance secondary. 2 different genres, same alleged result.
Then you have a film like Nocturne. Now this was a totally different beast. This wasn't about being the object of desire. It was a psychological thriller about ambition, obsession, and a mind literally cracking under pressure. The role really needed a performance that could show you those cracks forming just beneath the surface.
So, did she pull it off? According to this take, nope. This quote just cuts right to it, claiming she never really sells that inner fire. That instead of feeling dangerous, the performance felt passive, again, letting the moody atmosphere do the work that the acting was supposed to.
So that brings up a really important question. What happens when the formula just stops working? This next section looks at the projects where that aesthetic first approach apparently couldn't save the film from being a critical or box office flop.
And wow, the numbers are, well, they speak for themselves. The source material highlights a single year where 4 of her leading roles just completely flopped. That's presented as some pretty hard evidence that a marketable look by itself can't carry a whole movie.
Okay, let's talk about rom-coms for a sec. A movie like Anyone But You has one job: make us believe in the chemistry. It lives or dies on that spark between the 2 leads. You just can't fake it. The audience has to feel it for it to work.
And, well, the critique argues that spark was just missing. And this quote about her comedic timing, oof, it's pretty brutal, suggesting the whole performance felt clunky and artificial, in a genre that needs to feel completely effortless.
And it doesn't stop there. Then you have Madam Web, the big superhero flick, where the criticism gets even harsher. The analysis claims her performance was so disconnected from the rest of the movie that her character just became, well, a talking prop, totally irrelevant to the plot.
Even when she jumps into horror with Immaculate, the analysis says we're seeing the same thing all over again. The critique is that the fear seems skin deep, all heavy breathing and wide eyes, not like a genuine terror coming from within. It even brings it all full circle, calling it basically a Euphoria scene in a different wardrobe.
Okay, so after going through all these different roles, the analysis pulls the camera way, way back. Because the argument here is that this isn't really just about one actress. It's a story about Hollywood itself and what the industry chooses to reward.
The idea is that she gets cast over and over again, not necessarily for her range, but because she fits this perfect pre-made mold, one that combines a certain kind of vulnerability with an aesthetic that the industry has known how to package and sell for decades.
And that brings us right to the heart of the entire critique. And it's all summed up in this one really powerful line. The idea isn't just that she's talented, it's that she's useful to a system that often prioritizes a marketable image over everything else.
So in the end, this whole deep dive leaves us with a pretty big question, not just about Sydney Sweeney, but about the whole machine. It forces us to ask what the industry, and maybe even what we as the audience, really value more: a familiar, easy-to-sell image, or the messy, unpredictable, and sometimes challenging power of truly transformative acting.